It's rich.
Sistahship, we got this on a brothership unite. Sistahship, we got this on a brothership unite. Sistahship, we got this on a brothership unite. Sistahship, we got this on a brothership unite.
I need a place where I can talk about some other shit. You do for some other man, I'm looking for a brothership. I need a place where I can talk about some other shit. You do for some other man, I'm looking for a brothership.
It's substance, no hoe. Bro, you know we on a mission, let's roll. Pop up on the Sistahship show, teach us everything you know. Come on, so we help each other grow. That's how our communities blow.
Yo, what's up? You got a sec? I need to build for a minute.
What's up?
Matter of fact, you can chill for a minute. Okay. I need a platform where we can talk about some other shit. Get jewels for some other men. I'm looking for a brothership.
Get it right, just real life. We tired of struggling. Airtight on this shot, no more dysfunctioning. We reeling in the sunken and we bringing in our brother in the battles that you face and be a cannon without confidence.
No disrespect to my sisters at all, but it's the
barbershop talk, kid.
Talk way, and just a little hustle to get paid. And just...
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Here we go.
All right. I think we are live as popcorn, and wanted to welcome the brothers that are on the show. This is our second show. We did an inaugural show about a month ago, and in keeping with our cadence of giving you guys some things that we bring to the forefront and chop it up with. The Brothaship, today we're going to talk about men's health in addition to COVID. So I think when we were putting the show together, we thought that we would take a moment of silence to commemorate the Tulsa massacre that occurred in 1921. For those of you that may not know the backstory, many years ago, after Reconstruction, there were not just one, but many communities that had begun to become self-sufficient through channeling their economic resources with each other, because the climate was such at that time where segregation and Jim Crow was beginning to flourish. And that generation decided, hey, you know what, we're going to build a better mousetrap. And rather than try to participate in a system that was not designed to help, we would help each other. And in this particular environment, when they couldn't go across the proverbial train tracks, they built their own businesses. So at that time in 1921, people had grocery stores to feed themselves. They had mortuary services to bury each other. They had restaurants to feed each other. They had schools to educate each other, doctors to heal each other. And that was affectionately called Black Wall Street, because that was something that had never really been done after the Civil War. So unfortunately, a chain of events occurred that made this massacre a hidden, long hidden fact in our history. A gentleman got into an elevator because he was unable to use the facilities where he was working. And while we don't know the specifics of what actually transpired, he bumped into the operator of the elevator. She was not too thrilled about it. There was a misunderstanding. And unfortunately, the reality of our history in America was at that time, he was apprehended, he was jailed. And there's a term called the lynch mob that many of us know, but those were fairly common at that time, where people took vigilantism in their own hands. And that actually was what happened. The lynch mob came to the jail to get this gentleman. World War I veterans, African-Americans that had come back, went to defend them because they knew that at that time, the flavor in that environment typically was when the lynch mob came, you were hung. That's a part of our history, right, wrong, or indifferent, but that's something that we have to acknowledge. So after those gentlemen came to defend that man, it got out of hand. Now, this massacre took place over the period of around 48 to 72 hours. And in the process, we don't know the specifics. Like we don't know specifics around the transatlantic slave trade. A lot of the facts are very murky, but we do know that there were virtually hundreds of dead when it was over. We're finding out now as we commemorate the event that mass graves are being found. And we know because there's still some descendants, a few, I think 3, what they call centurions, people over 100 years old that were able to communicate what they saw and they experienced. So I think in the spirit of the show, we're going to give those souls a moment of silence because they weren't heard then and they're beginning to be heard now. And we need to continue to tell the story because there's lessons behind the American experience, both bad and good. So I'm going to ask that we do maybe about 30 seconds of silence to commemorate those souls that aren't here to represent themselves and those that persevered and were able to carry on that legacy. Thank you, guys. I appreciate that. I think that that's something that the ancestors feel, you know, and we got a long way to go. I mean, I think, you know, before we get into the actual health show, I mean, it was something that Bay brought to our attention. And thank you for that, my brother, because that's something that we have to talk about. And I think it matters because right now we're having, as a country, some dichotomy of thought around what should be shared as our history. But I think, you know, at the end of the day, the president of the United States, he was there to commemorate it. And just from a historical standpoint, he was the first president in 100 years to even bring it up. Now, I'm going to say, being an objective person that I am, he should have cut a check, but that's a different story for a different time. So let's talk about the issue at hand. And as a part of our schedule, we said we would talk about COVID. And no show is worth its salt, in my opinion, if we don't kind of give a backstory around COVID. Because people talk about COVID-19. What is COVID? You know? But basically, COVID, when we break it down, it's a contagious disease caused by severe acute respiratory syndrome. And that's why it's called the coronavirus. This was the first case was actually recorded in Wuhan, China in 2019, as we all know. And because it spread outside of that sphere and into a global situation, that's why it was called the pandemic. So at the end of the day, we had something similar years ago. We had SARS, if people remember. And then over 100 years ago, we had the Spanish flu. Same type of thing. Now, where it gets dicey, and I think where a lot of our conversation is gonna spark different points of view, is that it is contagious. Just to give you a few facts, worldwide, 33 million people have contracted the disease. And 3.4 million people have died worldwide. In the United States, 173, I'm sorry, I got my numbers wrong. 33 million in the United States caught the disease. 596,000 people have died. Now, when we look at that from a mortality standpoint, that's roughly 1.7% of the population in the US, but it's a lot greater worldwide. That's about 2%. So, you know, it is serious. I will share my just testimony because I happened to be in Argentina when this jumped off on business. So I didn't know what really was going on. And I have a fear of needles. So just for full transparency, I had no plans when there wasn't a vaccine to get it. I just didn't know what was going on. But my truth that I'd share with you is that in the course of 4 to 6 weeks, in the beginning of March, I lost about 17 friends, families, or loved ones or relatives, people that I actually knew. So it became real for me through the lens of this is serious. As we talk and open it up about health, I think that there's a lot to that. But I just wanted to set that stage and then open it up to you guys and say, what were your experiences with COVID? Did you lose a lot of people? Did you think it was a farce? Or do you think it's a farce? What were your initial impressions once the news got out that this was a serious pandemic?
So, well, before we go into that, just want to reintroduce myself. What's up, people? Thanks for the support again. It's the guy, Young Rich. I'm gonna stick with Young Rich on the show because you know. Oh man, originally from the Bronx, New York, living in Charlotte, by way of Youngstown, Ohio. And once again, first and foremost, thank y'all for the support from the first show. We did some great numbers. We had some great feedback. So we just ask y'all continue. Next up, we got Hat Man Bay.
What's up, everybody? Yeah, I'm Bay from Yonkers, New York. I'm not from the big city like the rest of these guys. I'm all from Yonkers.
Wow, yo.
Yeah, I wanted to say that opening statement with Wall Street as we were taking that pause. You know, I got chills, man, just thinking about brothers and sisters losing everything and fighting the good fight to hold on to what they had. It's very, I was very taken aback because I can actually feel the pain, you know, that they had, you know, when you really think about what they had built up and the way they were thriving by themselves and the supremacists came in and took everything from them. That was and that was just one city. That was just one city, but this is the one that I was listening to Judge Joe Brown and he says, why do we have designer massacres? You know, because they're all massacres, but it was very touching to me to have that 30 seconds, man. And I appreciate you guys taking the time out and giving respect to our ancestors because they are our ancestors and we are them. So, you know, but that's it. We'll go to my man, Travis.
Yeah, thanks, Bay. Hello, everyone. I'm gonna echo what Rich said. That, you know, thank you all for the support and continuing to spend your Sundays with us, trying to get this message and information out and trying to be of service to the community. So Bay, I'd like to jump off on what you actually said. And I think one of the things that Darren highlighted about it taking 100 years to actually have a light being shown on this atrocity occurring on U.S. soil, and you know the successive presidents that we've had in office, and you know the current administration taking the stand to shine a light on this thing. You know, being the centennial and having some centurions, some of the last remaining Americans that are actually alive during the time of this atrocity, testifying before Congress and putting it out there in the public sphere. In America, what happens often is that because history is dictated, written by the victor, what often happens is we often require a mirror to be shown in our faces on the ugly, dark truth of some of the things that occur, right? Darren, when you highlighted the incident that occurred that sparked this event, right? Having service members return home from serving overseas and are now going to stand in defense of this young man. I don't know his name, but I am familiar with the incident. The thing that jumps out to me as a veteran is having that dichotomy of social interaction where you go overseas and you're treated in a reverent manner during that time, right? Black, white, yellow, whatever. and then you return home and have a layer of that stature stripped away in your own home, your native country that you've, decided to stand in defense of. You go over, you do your job, and you come back, and not only are you not thanked, right, but you're forsaken, right? And that's I think that is stark. But to have it paced or cast in a light like this, where you are now taking a stand in defense of a fellow citizen against other citizens, some you probably stood shoulder to shoulder with overseas, now standing in stark contrast because of this, level of hatred that was shown in our country. I think it is something that, unfortunately, I feel many Americans are completely clueless, not only on this incident, but the fact that these types of events have occurred. And let us not forget that the Greenwood area in Tulsa, right, is one of many events like this. So it's not unique or isolated. It was a symbol of the time and the methodology of Jim Crow in America, and the only way, in my opinion, for this nation to heal and move forward is to have an observance that will lead to an atonement. And let's talk about it, get it out there, educate people, and move forward. But too often, I think there's a reluctance to even enter into discussions because it feels like ghosts of the past revisiting, and it's going to stir up ugly emotions. And that is true, but you can't heal without going through some dark times. In order to, remove cancer from your body, the only known, effective treatments, cause you more pain and things you have to endure to get past that. So, our country has a cancer that we need to address openly and candidly and get after it.
I'm gonna say some words around that, and we can jump into the COVID piece. But thank you guys for each individually sharing this, because I have a perspective. By the way, the gentleman's name was Dick Rowland. He was a shoe shiner. That's the gentleman's name. His actions, real or perceived, were what started this. But I think, some people may ask the question logically, hey, well, why are you guys talking about this? I thought this was going to be a men's show. Well, I'm going to attempt to try to bring this together, because that untold story, among the many others, are what is a burden to America. And we're talking about health in this. There's an aspect and a relationship of mental health around this. And we can get into that, and we will, because Travis, what you were saying is right now we have I call it a scab, for lack of a better term, with respect to what's going on in America. Now, we're hearing a lot through the media, and I think one of the reasons we all decided to wrestle and take this endeavor, at least with telling our truths and coming prepared and sharing our perspectives, knowledge, and wisdom, is to provoke thought. I contend to you that the media are a bunch, in many cases, zookeepers that attempt to provide a narrative. Now, I'm saying that to say this. We're hearing a lot about people talking about critical race theory, and it's getting a lot of news, but I'm going to throw it back and just ask you guys, when you went to public school, those of you that did, some of us may have gone to private schools, but in the public school curriculum, there wasn't a lot about the African-American experience at a granular level. As I recall it, it was the transatlantic slave trade, the Civil War, and civil rights. That's it. And that's why if you talk to other people through all walks of life, they're very uninformed about specific things that have happened in African-American history. So I think that's why it's important to bring it up while we have the forum. I think it's a tie-in because that lack of understanding among us all, because I used to have a test. If people thought that they knew our history, it was 10 questions. And sadly, everybody didn't do well? Who invented the traffic light? Who invented the light filament? Who invented the refrigerator? Who invented, who did the first open heart surgery? You know, those type of things. Who invented the cell phone? You know, people don't know the actual truth of that. So I hope that the time that we carved out to talk about Tulsa, what it means, and the implications of what those actions, that one in particular, have today, tie into our general health. Because I think, and I try to steer clear of the political implications of it, this is coming up because we have a reckoning. We've got to start to really be able to have these discussions. And what concerns me right now, when we look at this and juxtapose what's going on in the media, people are trying to do the stiff arm because the narrative seems to be, we don't want to talk about what happened because that makes us look bad. But the truth is the light. And I'll leave that there. So let's get back into the COVID thing. We're in a situation where most of us were locked down for 12 to 14 months. Did you guys think it was real? Did you take precautions to stay out of harm's way? Let's open it up and start chopping that up.
I'll be real quick before I go into the COVID. As far as just remembering history growing up, for me, I felt like it was just a consistent reminder that we were slaves. There was Dr. Martin Luther King, there was Rosa Parks, there was Malcolm X, and that's it. And I mean, year after year after year, it was just diving a little deeper into slavery, slave trades, and locations of where slaves were traded. But you know, when you start to do research on your own and you start to look into, you know, African culture and being rich, and you know, something so simple as finding out that, hey, people from Africa want us to come back. You know, we were told in school that they don't want you to go back over to Africa because you're not really from Africa, you're an American, and things of that nature. So when I think back to history, I just think, you know, I think Bay said it before, you know, they kind of just try to set us up mentally to believe their history. My father always said, you know, history is his story. So we got the public school American version of his story, of what they wanted us to know. So when you go to COVID, for me, just coming from a little different perspective, first thing I said is just, what is it that Trump is trying to neglect to get away? Is he trying to prolong this term? You know, then it became are they trying to generate some more funds to, I don't know, it became a money thing. You know, do we get the people to pay for this cure? Do we get the pharmacies to pay for it, the businesses to pay for it? And as I just sat back and watched and looked at it, I mean, the deaths were real. You know, my family had it. You know, I've had some members who passed from it, friends as well. So I definitely believe that it was real. But to me, I just remember seeing a clip of Obama speaking about it some time back, when he was saying there's going to be a time when we have to prepare for, you know, a sickness of such, and it's going to wipe out the economy and, you know, kind of reset. I think then they knew, you know, but at the same time, we listened to what we listened to. Something like that wasn't exposed. We didn't have any idea of what he was talking about, but here we are today. And I think, you know, at the end of the day, really, unfortunately, we are the specimens. We are the lab rats. We are the people that are the guinea pigs right now in this experiment. And they're just trying to figure out how they can reset the economy, race, gender, and it's kind of like a behind the scenes hidden game with the powers that be that really run it. You know, that's my view on the COVID thing at the moment, you know.
Damn, Rich, you said you was the young one, man. Jesus, that was right on point, my brother. That was right on point. Was right on point, man. Yeah, you know, I agree with you 110%, man. I mean, I think it's real. I definitely think it's real. I don't believe it's as deadly as they say it is. You know, I think if you eat right, you take care of yourself. I mean, I had my son had it. I had 3 coworkers when I was working catch it. 2 passed away. They put the 2 that passed away on a respirator. The one that survived, they put him on a Z-Pack. He recovered. I talked to him 2 weeks after. He said it was rough. He said it was deadly. He said he felt terrible, which I totally understand. I was like, wow, it's rough. I think there's a lot more to it than what they're saying. I think just like AIDS, that was man-made. Now they're coming out and saying this was man-made. Finally they're coming out and they're admitting it, like, they had something to do with it. As far as precautions, and I'm an asthmatic, I'll tell you guys, I'm allergic to everything.
Me too.
And I had to, back in 2011, I changed my whole diet. Right now, I'm extremely heavy because I got injured on a job, had a couple of surgeries and stuff like that. But back in 2011, I went totally vegan, changed everything in my life, man, changed everything. And I seen the when you change your diet, how your whole life will change, how everything changed. Even my vision got better. I couldn't believe my allergies were gone. It was crazy. So I think because this virus is so deadly, and if you don't have a strong immune system, which we don't have as Americans, because the food has steroids in it, we're major meat eaters, which in my opinion, we got to chill with the meat, in my opinion.
True.
I think we're surrounded by plants and trees and stuff like that. And those plants are just telling you, I'm right here. I just ordered me, and you guys might laugh at me, I just ordered me some pine needle tea. I don't know if anybody knows about that, but it's supposed to be, you look it up, it's supposed to be extremely good for you, and it's supposed to be more vitamin C than lemons and all of that, the other vitamin C carry vegetables and fruits. They use it in the winter for scurvy and stuff like that. And they said they've been using that to fight off the COVID. We've been here for millions of years, man. And we fought millions of viruses and millions of different things. I just don't believe what they're telling me. And me working for a major media company, I know the BS that they spin. Darren brought it up a little bit, and he says, they're trying to, we are like little trained animals, and they just tell us what to do, and they hurt us in different ways. Once you start thinking outside the box, that's when you're off the internet. That's when you're off of Facebook. That's when you're off of YouTube. That's when you're off of all these different platforms, because you're just thinking, it's not even that, it's just common sense. Just look at it. Just really look at it and get the information from every aspect and take it and try to figure it out yourself, and take what your doctor says. Okay, your doctor says this. Okay, I'm going to listen to you. But I had my own doctor tell me I was having a major time. I was going through divorce, child support, everything that we've all gone through. And my asthma was killing me. I had heart palpitations. I had everything. They had me on antidepressants. They had me going to therapy. They had me on all these different drugs, man, screwing me up all around. Soon as I went vegan, all of that went away. Soon as I stopped. I was telling you guys a couple of weeks ago when we were during one of our, the last show, and we were talking afterwards, I even stopped using toothpaste because toothpaste was just destroying my teeth. I started using activated charcoal. My dentist said to me, I don't know what you're doing. I don't want to know, but keep it up because your teeth have gotten so much better. That's a damn shame for your dentist to tell you that. He should be more curious of what's going on and let me pass this on. But he can't do that because he's locked into the system. He's in the matrix. You know what I'm saying? So that's my thoughts on it. I mean, I definitely think there's something out there. I think they're exaggerating a lot of things, in the media, because they want us running around, just crazy and scared because, it's killing everybody, but we still got sports and everything going on. I just don't understand that. I just don't get it. If it's that deadly, everything's just shut down. We should get this under control, which they did, but then they started to slowly open up and then they closed it back up. They didn't know what the hell they were doing. And a fact is a fact. You cannot change information. We were getting so many different, the information that was coming out was so convoluted, we didn't know which way to go. So a fact is a fact. That doesn't change. So I just don't know.
Okay, all right. I know you're gonna say something, Travis, but let me jump because now we have to start cooking because you unpackaged a lot, and I'm gonna just speak to just the piece around the information because that's where we can all agree before we go into different areas. I contend that the COVID issue, let's forget the origins, forget we have consensus that it's real, but my issue slash problem slash concern is that it was the incompetence of public policy that exacerbated this. In other words, you know, when you have a pandemic, typically you have a structure. You have the CDC as the nucleus of information because you have people that are scientists and the medical profession behind it. Now, if it's a man-made or biological weapon, they're gonna finesse it the way they want. But at the end of the day, the public policy is one that is of unison that gets us to an end goal. We didn't see that when this first came out. In fact, we heard from the person that is the head of public policy, the president of the United States, say you could go to work with it. Remember that? Or there were only 15 cases and there would be 0. So, you know, when we talk about people being herded in media, this became politicized. I mean, I can tell you, and let's just use AIDS as an example. We all knew something was going on with that because it struck a granular area. Homosexuals, hemophiliacs, and intravenous drug users originally. That was where that started. That's where that
40
happened.
years ago yesterday.
Right, and then it spread like wildfire. So, you know, I can't speak for everybody, but as a young whippersnapper, I knew the science behind it, but I never questioned the probabilities of it, you know, and we all did what we needed to do to avoid it. So that's where the COVID thing came. But unfortunately, in this game, if it was man-made, the concern I have is the way that it was politicized. Because remember, we went from the basics of virology. A virus is spread, right? But then when we got to people starting to say or putting dollars behind the health of the community, we started hearing states go, oh, I wearing a mask is restricting my freedom. People were literally comparing it to slavery. So that's the hyperbole of the masses. That was mass hysteria. People bought 100 rolls of toilet tissue. I understand that if you're inside, you need to, you know what I'm saying? We started doing dysfunctional things because we were exposed, our habits. So I'm saying, I mean, I'm just bringing that point out there. The mismanagement of public policy, we can't ever forget that. And I always challenge people with that because, like I said, I don't think that the COVID had a Democratic or Republican or an independent vein. If you went out there half prepared, there was a greater chance of you getting it. And those numbers prove that out. So I just wanted to throw that in because we can't ever forget that, only because we have potentially the same type of narratives being thrown out for more things in the future. So,
Trav, I know you got to speak, but Darren, are you saying that you believe in what the CDC is saying? Like,
here's what I think. I think that it was a biological weapon. I believe that, yes. China's not our friend. I think your last president was trying to tell you in both sides of the ways that we're okay with them or we need to work with them. They're the enemy. Listen, China has a 50-year plan. Most people don't understand the real estate that China owns in America. There is a fundamental, see now I have to go there so you understand why my head is the way it is. We have an interdependency economically. See, because what some people buy into is buy American. You're not going to make a shirt in America for less than $15 an hour. The Nikes that people like to wear, you can make them for $7. That's the per unit cost. And by the time they get onto American shores, they're marked up to $4.50. So we're not, unless we fundamentally change that. So what I'm saying is that there's things going on that we don't know, and biological weapons are being made. I believe that's what happened. Was it released? I don't know. I'll never know. I just know that we also have what they call populists that live in the country that believe in collateral damage. There are people that pull the strings that think it's okay for 1 million people to die. It's always been the case. So I think, to answer your question, I think that it's real. It was a virus. I think it may have had some man-made elements, but at the end of the day, when you don't have the right unison in policy, a lot of people died that shouldn't have died, and that's my humble opinion.
Darren, I'm sorry. Darren, I'm being a politician, man. Do you believe what the CDC said? Do you believe?
That's what I wanted to know.
Well, what part? I believe
I mean, just on the facts of it, because it was just brought to my attention to go on the CDC website and they talk about zombies and preparing for zombies. So is this a part?
No. I don't believe that. No, I don't believe that.
So as far as your sources, do you believe half of what CDC is saying versus, you know what I mean?
No, okay, let me be clear. I didn't read that part. I'm sorry. Let me explain then. I wasn't clear. I believed that wearing a mask significantly reduced my potential of getting COVID.
Gotcha.
Period. And that's why I wore a mask, and I didn't get it. And people I know got it that didn't wear masks. So maybe it's a coincidence. I believe what Bay said. I started taking elderberry and other supplements to try to build my immune system. Mm-hmm. If I didn't know you personally, I made sure I stayed away from you. I've never used more sanitizer than I ever have before. So based on that, in that 18-month time interval before I chose to get the vaccine and I might become a zombie, that worked for me. So that's what I listened to the CDC. We can't control the elements that bring the diseases here. By the way, that opiate disease that's been brought into our communities that started 25 years ago with crack cocaine, that was killing people at the same level and more than the COVID. But remember, that was a distraction because that's what we were talking about before COVID hit. But we'll get into that when we start talking more about the men's health and things of that nature. So
Travis, quiet. Talk to us.
All right, I'm gonna jump in, and I'm hopeful I'm gonna swing the balance of the scale back to a little bit level, because I think listening to you gentlemen talk, I think there's a common thread of the potential for it being a conspiracy-like situation that contributed to much of what's going on with COVID. And I'm not saying that we've been absent, intergovernmental misconduct or misinformation or like just straight dereliction, right? I think that's part and parcel to every major government effort, right? And you got people that are designed to supervise and look into those issues. And I think that's something that we'll see more of in the coming days, that there were those things that you all are highlighting, the origins of COVID as a pandemic, how did that actually come about? The physical dissemination of it, how messaging domestically here in America contributed to maybe greater loss of life than probably should have occurred based on a few factors that I want to kind of zoom in on. One of the things that jump out to me, not so much what, I think Darren zoomed in on the public policy piece. I'd like to be a little more precise with it. I think the politics specifically was one of the chief causal factors of a lot of what occurred, because even with the intent or desire to develop a vaccine, right? We've had this virus pandemic identified, and there's steps being taken to safeguard the country, but the politics of it, right? That even the people that were trying to produce this vaccine and theoretically disseminate to the masses, educate people in a professional capacity, right? In their other political capacities are undermining their own work, to the point that people who are great political supporters of, at that time, the administration, were and continue to be vehemently opposed to taking a vaccine that's touted as one of the greatest logistical medical successes of the 20th century, right? Developing a vaccine in response to a global pandemic in the time frame that it occurred is a magnificent feat of human technology, right? Medical technology. But the politics of it is preventing some people from even entertaining taking it. Even those people that are highly supportive of the administration that touts this as one of their great successes. That kind of thinking, to me, is counterintuitive, and it goes against what today's point. What is fact, right? The politics of the day have enabled this skewing of facts to the point where people see a post on social media and that becomes a fact, good, bad, and different. It doesn't matter what the source is. And the responsibility and the effort it requires to vet these things is greater than the flow, the incoming flow of these pieces of information, and subsequent pieces of information out to substantiate what they first received, and it might not be true, right? So just the demand, right, the flow, the deluge of all these bits of information, many of them false or misleading, is becoming the problem, right? You also have the economic component where we've got the greatest economy in the history of the world that's roaring at the time of the pandemic. And then what happens? Yeah, you got to stop the money, because if you continue the money, a lot more people will get sick, a lot more people will die, and guess what? The economy will be crushed. We're looking at the potential of 10 times the 1920s, 30s depression era, right? So there's that money component that's driving the national leadership to be like, okay, all right, well, let's try and skirt this line for as long as we can until it turns out that it's untenable, right? And the politics also place pressure on that, and conversely, the economics place pressure on that. But then there's also probably the more prevalent and probably more applicable piece to this conversation, which is the social aspect, where people are entrenched in how they see and respond to the pandemic, informed by the politics, informed by their economic interests, but undergirded by the social stature, their family's history and exposure, some of their experiences, how they perceive their role in this country, right? We haven't mentioned it yet, but within the Black community, one of the chief historical friction points when it comes to mass government medical efforts is the Tuskegee study, right? I think it's officially titled the study of untreated syphilis in the Negro male, right? And for another example of how misinformation might run roughshod, right? This was a study of Black males in 1932, right? Where they were not injected with syphilis, but if they had syphilis, it was prevented from being treated. So they wanted to examine the effects of syphilis on the human body. And these men from the Tuskegee area, 600 of them, half of the population study went untreated with syphilis, and then they had a control group that did not have syphilis, and they used those as the baseline for that study. But if you ask many Black people, I have parents and older generation members of my family that believe that the United States government injected syphilis into these gentlemen. And that's, although it's pernicious, it's malicious, right? That's not exactly what happened. But when you allow these different pieces of information that they return to political relevance, what happens is the message is allowed to be placed in a space where now there's some merit here. And if the facts don't get re-examined in the right way, then that's a problem. Part of this whole situation with the Tuskegee thing and why it becomes, more relevant now is because it took the Associated Press. It took 40 years for this study to come to light, and the press highlighted it. And even after the press exposes it, it still took another 3 months for the study to stop. Public outrage. Everybody's, hey, what is this? We're examining. We are withholding medical treatment to Americans. This is crazy. 3 months, it still took it to stop. In today's social media environment, 3 months is like 30 years. Could you imagine enduring a political crisis, a medical crisis for 3 months and no action is being taken when you have people in harm's way? That's crazy. But from 1972, when this thing eventually came out, it still took another 35 years for an American president to say, hey, this thing happened. It was wrong. And on behalf of the United States of America, I apologize. Right?
That's just one event. So imagine how many other things. That was one that they got caught.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but Travis, but that's one that they got caught. So imagine how many others.
But that's part of it, Bay, too, right? Because it's left, because of the way that thing was conducted, right? It's left to the imagination. And let's not leave out the part, right, where you had this study occurring, right? These Black men were prevented from attaining medical treatment to the degree where local Black clergy members, local Black elected officials, right, were used as proxies to encourage these men to take part in this study, right? And if there was a man in the study that was seeking medical treatment elsewhere, there have been letters disseminated locally to local doctors that if Joe Smith from Tuskegee comes in complaining about fatigue or these symptoms, and you diagnose it to be a syphilis-related thing, do not cease and desist. Don't treat them. They're part of this study that they don't know. I think the fact of these types of events occurring in America is something that we need to show the mirror and have people just understand that it's a thing, right? But at the same time, there is this responsibility for us to be informed about those things and not allow them to be hijacked and repurposed into, a deeper, broader conspiracy that's only going to undermine people that look like you and I, because they're now more fearful than ever, applying historical, data points and facts on a situation that, in my opinion, is different, right? There's a through line there. The common thread is that the U.S. government is involved intensely in this effort, just like they were the U.S. Public Health Service, was involved in the syphilis study. But in my mind, they're different. And I think there's a responsibility on individuals to inform themselves so that they don't get sucked into, hey, you know what? I'm going to wave off on everything, because that's just not in our, that's not in the African-American Latino community best interest, because they're disproportionately impacted by this.
So Travis, so you're saying
Mm-hmm.
that you totally understand the Tuskegee thing. I'm going to break it down to a 4th grade level, because that's where I am.
It's right about where I'm at.
So you're saying that you believe all the stuff from the past, you believe the Tuskegee thing, you believe all of these things that happened to us in the past. But this thing right here, we got to look at it and we got to say, well, maybe they're right. Maybe they're actually telling us the truth, and we should,
absolutely
go with their treatment.
Absolutely.
I totally have to disagree with you.
No. I'll tell you why, Bay. Because it requires intellectual rigor to do that. And that process, right? By saying, you know what, I'm just going to discount what's going on now because if it walks like a bear, it's furry, it's got long teeth and big claws, it's a bear. I think what happens, and I hear you, right? But you got to remember, you're an informed brother. You like to read and research, and unfortunately, that broadly is not how the masses interact with public crises, right? They're going to go with just what I said. If the first tagline that comes through on social media, Facebook post or whatnot, and if it comes from somebody that they believe is credible, a source that they believe may be credible, it's fact. And that, I feel, is a dangerous thing. If you're willing to put in intellectual rigor, right, to get to the bottom of who's saying what and why, then I'm with you. If you're skeptical, I respect that. However, I do not condone you seeing a Facebook post of any person, not you, seeing a Facebook post and then inherently drawing a through line, right, from, a past event to where we are today, because you can highlight many differences between that study and what's going on. It was, isolated.
But we're not talking about a Facebook post. We're talking about history, a history of what this country has done to us, and not even a history of what they've done to us, a history of what they've done to their own people. Because as I said before, you got to remember, they told us that cigarettes were good for you. They told us that asbestos was good for you. They told us so many things were good for us, and then they told us marijuana was a gateway drug. Now you got marijuana shops everywhere. So now you want me to say that this particular one is different.
Can I jump in? Because let me just jump in for a moment. And I'm sorry I got kicked off, but I made a argument about that. And I think how we can make sense of it. And I'm not trying to justify it. I look at it in perspective. I lost 2 grandparents because they used to smoke the Chesterfield unfiltered cigarettes. Man. Philip Morrison used to hawk those, right? And remember, many people, they socialized it. Now, I'm a simple dude. I know if, God forbid, you get trapped in a burning house for a certain amount of time, you're going to die of smoke inhalation. So, that's why I don't smoke anything to this day, because I saw them die. But here's where I'm going with this. There are many things that are out here in our environment that aren't good for us. We talked about that on the back end. We should never really be eating anything in the box. And I think you alluded to that with the lifestyle that you've adapted, but it's out there. So where I'm going with that is that I think COVID, again, and how I view it, and I'm not trying to justify it, I do believe it was a biological warfare element, and it got loose. I don't know if it was a mistake. I don't know if it was intentional, but that's where we're morphing in this space that we're all fighting for, which is global domination. And you said it, Bay, at the end of the day, we're collateral damage. So if it's something, if you think about it, think about the last maladies that we've had over the years. AIDS, acquired immune deficiency syndrome. That broke you down. And guess what you died of? Pneumonia, typically. With SARS, when that came out from the birds, what did that necessarily affect? Your respiratory, your breathing, your ability to put in oxygen, which is the basic element of life. And now we have COVID. So where I'm going with this is that we have to just know the playing field. Again, I never doubted it, and I think we all agreed that it was real. How it got here really is inconsequential, because it's going to stay. That's why it's COVID-19. There was a 1 through 18, and 19 just was a little bit more lethal because, again, with the science of virology, a virus can mutate. And I'll get into that and segue into why it's important for us to get a vaccine. If it makes us see through doors, that's okay. But I ain't getting the lethal potential of COVID, because when you don't have it, right? Forget being a Republican or Democrat, white or black, that virus has the potential to mutate into a more deadly situation. And coming from Newark, New Jersey, having had a significantly higher rate of infection because of the density of population, I can, in good faith, listening to the medical community, that I made the decision to get
the vaccine for, to let friends that I know decide to just go out there because they don't have the luxury I have of working from home. They got to get on a train. They got to get, or they're an essential worker that has to be around somebody. They may have predispositions to certain diseases that may make them more susceptible to die from it. So if there's a quote unquote cure, you know, when we start getting into this piece of men's health, you know, the number one killer is heart disease, followed by cancer. And then COVID was number 3, and that was an anomaly. But at the end of the day, God forbid if we get those maladies and they say it's their experimental drug, I can't speak for you guys, but I'm going to try it because I believe in a higher power. And if there's something out there, I'm going to do it. So I'm just trying to make sense of it. It's probably something that was made. It probably was something that the big wig said, you know what, some people are going to die. In fact, if you listen to the public policy, capitalism was what dictated opening up. Yep. They said, well, you know what? Okay, well, we know it's bad. I even heard a president say, well, it's not that bad in the red states. If the blue states didn't have the higher number of infections, we'd be okay. That's what I heard. Yeah. So when you hear that, that tells you that the element of capitalism usurped people. And that's what we're dealing with. That's an even bigger issue. You know, socioeconomically, as a person of color, we may be on the lower end, but I just want equality. If everybody's dying at the same rate, then we're all in the same boat.
And
I
think that's part of how I view it. I think that's part of my point, Darren, though, is that, you know, the equality of it is that this is a pandemic, and it doesn't seem to be targeting people of color based on them being people of color. It's targeting them because of their access to healthcare, right?
Well, Travis, we all got our smartphones with us. Just Google the COVID cases in Haiti. Just Google the COVID cases. Google the COVID cases on the continent of Africa and see what you get. Mm-hmm. That melanin that we got is no joke, man. No joke. And if we ate the way we were supposed to eat, this is going to lead to men's health. We'd be a lot stronger. Mm-hmm. Our immune system would be a lot stronger. Our minds would be a lot more focused. And like I said, when I also did a lot of fasting early on. And when I would fast, I did the longest fast, I think, was 48 hours, close up into the 50, 60 hours. Man, everything got clearer. Everything got better. Mucus was coming up. Everything just felt so much better, man. We're just not a healthy society. So any little thing that comes along is going to knock you the hell out. Because every day in this country, when we eat dinner, every dinner is Thanksgiving. Every breakfast is a major breakfast, a stack of pancakes. Every lunchtime is a major lunchtime. I mean, if all of you guys, I think, traveled outside the country, once you get outside the country, the portion sizes shrink.
Man, yes, sir.
Yes.
I mean, and I went out, we were eating, I forgot, me and my wife went out eating yesterday. Man, I ate a salad, and it was like, and my kids were eating a steak. It was like a brontosaurus burger, man. I was like, are you serious? Are you serious with all this food? So I just think that we are just an unhealthy country. And as far as like the shot, I just don't understand. Me and you, Darren, I think you live in Pennsylvania.
Yes.
Me and you go to New York. We're not going on the same road. We're going to go to Pennsylvania on different roads. My point being, there's not only one way to do something. You just cannot tell me that I got to take this shot and that's the only way I can do it. And, you know, they're going to say, well, we're going to have travel passports. Back to capitalism. Do you think that the airline is going to go for that? Do you think people are going to go for that?
Can't do that for religion.
They got to get their money, man. That's never going to happen. They're going to get their money no matter what. Because if they only let people travel that have vaccines, you guys are going to be paying out the ass.
You can't do that for religious rights, though. I mean,
right. Well, hold on. Let's talk science and let's talk numbers. Because I think at the time when those conversations were there, we have to go back to the politicization of COVID. People were stopping to get it. If you get herd immunity, it's going to be what it's going to be. Mm-hmm. Now, because I've chosen to do that, and I hate to say it, I'm just going to keep it real because it's survival for me. If there's a booster, I have to get the booster. I don't like shots. My wife will tell you I got to get a whoopee and a lollipop. But because I've chosen that path,
they gave you a Krispy Kreme donut. You missed out. Then you could have got a lap dance. You know that?
but my point is, at that point, I agree with you. They're not going to be able to do that, but they're going to try, because now I'm going out of the country in October. And I already know the carrier that I'm using, they want a vaccine. And that's okay with me.
But Darren, let me interrupt you. They want, or do you have to have? What they want and what you have to have.
I don't know, to be honest with you.
Flying internationally, you have to have a negative COVID test.
Right. So you have to be tested.
But you don't need the shot. Because I've flown out. I've been out of the country.
I've been to Costa Rica. I've been to DR. All they want to know is on your way there that you don't have COVID, and you got to schedule 48 hours before you come back.
That's all they want to know.
That's it.
Because I went all over the place and I didn't have no issues. All you got to do is get that swab up your nose, which sucks. But
why do you gentlemen think that the vaccine hesitancy is the way it is? Is it conspiracy, historical? Is it a health related thing, Bay? Is it like what do you think is driving most people to be the people who are reluctant?
Well, I'm gonna let Rich go ahead. Rich.
I was just gonna say with Bay, as he was just saying to Darren, if you guys are traveling from PA to New York, you're gonna go 2 different routes. I think it's case by case overall with the COVID. For me, 38, being healthy, being an athlete, I'm starting to just maintain a certain weight level. So of course the eating habits, and I'm not exercising as much. But for me, I never took the flu shot. When I started exercising, I didn't catch the flu. When I started exercising, I had asthma. I was in a hospital from birth to maybe 3 years old, maybe even 5. But when I started playing and exercising a little bit, I kind of stayed out of the hospital. And, for myself, I chose not to take the test because I've been healthy thus far. I've done everything that pretty much the basics of preventing, mask and sanitizing. But again, for my uncle, one who has gotten sick and went to the hospital, it made sense for him. So I think overall, that is case by case. And the hesitancy for me, Trav, I think it's just a matter of finances. Darren said it earlier, and I definitely agree. This is a global domination situation because it's not like it's just America. We can't just blame it just on Trump. Right. It's everywhere. But if you look at what Bates said, and you look at Africa and how they eat and how they take their old roots and such things, then cures or the deaths to the tolls of people that obtain it is not the same versus those who are here in America, where our first option is McDonald's, and this is how we eat. And so I think it, not red or blue, but just a matter of food deserts and where you're eating and the people. I think it comes to the diet. I think it comes to just maintaining the health over the course of years. So for me, the hesitancy is more or less, how can this reset the economy? I think that's what it just comes down to for me. They don't care about us. We're people, we're guinea pigs. Just a matter of when it's all said and done, what country is going to lead financially. That's just my view.
But that's a broad look at it, Rich. I'm gonna push you a little bit on this. That's a broad kind of geopolitical look at it, right? Mm-hmm. Like what I'm asking you is, how come you won't get the shot, right? You chose not to get the shot. Right. If you care to share, and I'll say up front, I got the shot. I'm fully vaccinated, but I'm a family. I know you at the point now where you're about to start your family and start your journey.
Thank you.
What chose you to forego, right? Because not putting your business out there, but you work in the public sphere, right? So you expose the people, and and even with hand sanitizers and masks and all of those things, the science says that by coming in contact with more people, right, to Bay's point, even when you're doing the right things, you have to mitigate against other unhealthy people around you. In my mind, the best mitigation is science-wise, I want to get inoculated or vaccinated against this thing. What's driving you to forego that and go the different road to Philly?
For me, it just like I said, the flu shot, that was something big. People wasn't necessarily dying from it, but hey, people ran and got it. I didn't. I of course a year didn't obtain the flu. Knowing myself, knowing health, getting my checkups, I felt healthy to where I can wait. Now, I'm not saying that I will never take it. It may come a time where we have to, but I wasn't going to rush at the front of the line to get the first vaccine, and then all of a sudden it's, hey, you're gonna have to take another one. You have to do this. So hey,
because of what though? What was making you reluctant to get to the front of the line?
no, I never wanted. Oh, you said what was making me?
Yeah,
I mean, America. You know what I mean? I just didn't trust it. Period.
Thank you. Yeah.
America. I'm just not rushing to go put something in me that we don't have a clear. You have different pharmacists and scientists saying this, saying there's no consistent concrete what this is that's being put. Oh, well, they're putting a virus in you. Oh, and they're putting a virus in you. Or if you take this, well, maybe you're gonna have to. It was too many maybes for me. So what I'll do is do the best of keeping my distance and doing whatever I can, making sure I eat right or whatever the case may be. But I do, and staying in prayer, most importantly, and saying that, I'll trust that and wait till they figure out the kinks. I didn't go buy Xbox when it first came out. I still don't have the latest Xbox, right? But I can still communicate with those who have it. And then once they work out the kinks, hey, I might get it. And it may be cheaper. All of the kinks may be worked out. So I'm willing to wait. I don't have to rush to be the front of the line. That's just me,
Would you give that advice to a family member?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, honestly, talking to my mom, my mom, my aunt, they all had it all at the same time, and I think my aunt or someone wants to get it. My mom is kind of hesitant or whatever, and my mom works into this field. So for me, I just say what I'm doing. But when you look at someone else's health, my mother talks, she's 50-50 with it. She's thinking about it, but she works in the healthcare system. And we talk about my uncle who actually just had just a shock, like he kind of body broke down. So he's like, man, I'm taking it. You know what, Unc? Yeah, because that makes sense for you. You want to do everything you can to prevent yourself from being back in that situation. But when you look at the track record with myself, when my doctor visits and checkups to make sure that I'm good and I'm not in there, I'm not coughing, flus, and for me. So I'm willing to take the risk for myself, but I have the discussions. So I'm not against anyone taking it. I'm not against anyone not taking it. Just for me, I'm just saying, because of America and how it's been, I'll wait. Don't worry, I'll wait. I'm good.
All right. I think, okay, so let me break in. And I think we're evenly divided among the four of us with respect to people that have gotten the vaccination and those that have looked at it side-eyed and said, hey, you know what? I'm gonna wait. And I'd argue Bay's like, hey, you know what? I'm not messing with it. That's okay. That's the beauty, actually, of America, the ability to make our own decisions. Now, I could argue that, if not having the shot puts you at a higher risk and others because it is a contagious disease, different story. But what I do want to do is agree to disagree and, more importantly, make a pivot from a time perspective. One of the things we wanted to talk about was men's health. And June is Men's Health Month. And that's a national observance used to raise awareness about healthcare for men and encouraging boys, men, and their families to practice and implement healthy living decisions such as exercising and eating healthy. So one of the things that actually came out of this, which I found interesting because I was that guy on the fence that got it, was I'm 54 years old. I mean, I'm putting it out there. That's how old I am, right? I've never spent an evening in a hospital now, try to stay in shape. Don't eat pork, don't smoke, don't drink alcohol. Now, I used to have high blood pressure. I used to get gout. Someone in the chat said something about gout. I will share with you from a medical standpoint, gout is basically accumulation of uric acid. A lot of people construe it with drinking too much. In my case, part of it was that, but a lot of it is just your diet. And we started talking about it in the COVID situation. 80% of our problems as humans in America is the diet.
Yep.
It's not how much we eat. Sometimes it's even what we eat.
What you eat, yes, sir.
A lot of people don't realize that life expectancy in America went down for the first time back to back. And I think I'd mentioned, I was talking about the reasons why, but the life expectancy now is 77.8 years. Women obviously live longer than us because they worry us to death. I'm just joking. No, that's a joke. But the woman has a life expectancy of 80.5. Men have a average life expectancy of 75.1 years. Now, what's interesting is when we break that down, Hispanics have a life expectancy of 79.9 years. White folks have an expectancy of 78 years, and we have a life expectancy of 72 years. That's huge. Now, part of this, when I tell you about those reasons why we have mortality, the number one reason was heart disease. The other one was cancer. COVID was the third. That was an anomaly, obviously, followed by strokes and Alzheimer's. Mm-hmm. But what we also have to talk about is the opioid issue, drug overdoses. That is a large part and has been a contributing factor of this uptick over the past 3 to 5 years. So I'm bringing that out to say we all have a vested interest as men, as head of households, as partners in relationships, to look out for our health. I have a family member that hasn't gotten a checkup. I think that he should. But, one of the things that I wanted to throw out there is, does everyone get a checkup semi-annually or annually?
Biannually for me, and mine was caused from my dad having colon cancer, and him being like me, younger athlete, stayed in shape, and then went in and got the news. So that scared me, which made me just go, let doc check everything from the rooter to the tutor. And doing that, it made me feel better. Prior to preparing for it, I ate a little different and tried to change up the diet in general. So yeah, definitely. Yep.
Rich, that's oh, go ahead, man. I'm sorry.
I had my seal popped, if you want to take it that way. I had a bad week a couple of years ago. I had colon exam and a tooth pulled in the same week, so they got me both ways, man. It's but I survived, man. I'm here, man, and yeah, I'm like Darren. I'm 57, so the whole health thing is serious. I'll tell you guys one thing too. This on subject, but a little off subject. I do a lot of crazy things as far as health wise. Just before the show, I take cold showers. I don't know if you guys take cold showers, but cold showers extremely good for you, man. Extremely good for you. If anybody wants to know, it's good for your skin, your immune system, testosterone levels, a little bit of everything. So I'm always experimenting with my health and trying to figure out more and more and more. And, just trying to hold on as long as I can, man. Hold on, But
yeah. That's how it is in Jamaica, right? Jamaica, I think they told me that they take cold showers like that all the time.
Yeah. I took cold showers, man. But I just looked it up. I got into it. Once I really started to go on a journey of fixing my health, and it was an organic thing where I was just finding different organic, different things organically to help me with my health journey. So like I brought up earlier, I stopped brushing my teeth with toothpaste maybe 10 years ago. And I haven't had no dental problems at all since then. It was a terrifying thing. I started with the activated charcoal. Then I went into oil pulling and stuff like that to clean up your gums and stuff like that. We need all of that type of stuff, man.
Yeah.
We need to go back to natural. They're just natural, because all these chemicals, man, it's just because every chemical they give you is a side effect. But
right.
You're supposed to be able to, if you wash your body with soap, you're supposed to be able to eat that soap. That's how natural it's supposed to be, man. It's crazy where we are, the air, the water, everything's polluting us, man. I just learned that they're in bottled water, they're putting salt in bottled water. What is salt doing in bottled water, man? It's like, it's crazy. It's crazy.
That's to continue to keep your taste for sugar and salt.
Yeah, I know, man.
That's why, because if you get fresh water,
yep,
just like fresh oxygen, it will actually take your breath away because you have to get acclimated to the elements of it.
Exactly.
But water's the same. I don't want to cut you guys off, but I want to bring an elephant in the room up that many of us don't talk about. We talked about our physical health. I'm proud that all of us in the Brothaship are making our physical health.
With the Trav saying you take? I didn't hear Trav. Trav, do you get
Travis?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah. So I guess this portion, and I'll quickly wrap up, Darren, because I know you want to transition. Rich, building off what you just said about the colonoscopy, I think it was a recent determination that age should shift from 50 to 45 now for the colonoscopy. Me being a 44-year-old man on the cusp of his 45th birthday, I'm going to take a deep breath and follow your lead, Rich. I'm encouraged to hear someone of your age being proactive in a way that's way beyond the medical recommendation right now, right? Because you're building the repetition and that the cognizance of how badly that could turn out for you, because you've personally experienced that with your dad. So kudos to you, my brother, and hopefully more people follow that kind of example, because for folks like me, I'm aware that both my parents, they are getting their colonoscopies, and they are, over the past few years, planted that seed in my mind to prepare me for the eventuality that that's something I'll need to do. But fortunately or unfortunately, now that the shift is to 45, and now I'm on track to start doing that. So that's what I'll do to stay.
I mean, what's the big fear amongst men when you sit in a barbershop? What's the big fear? It's the man pride, right? Like, oh, so they
not for me.
No?
Not for me. I mean, I think it's just the overall invasiveness. Anytime you have something going inside your body, right? It is also the element of you being conscious during this procedure. That's just not something that I'm a big fan of thinking about. But I'm not. I don't want to take the overly masculine kind of hyper masculine kind of view that I got a problem that way. Because like I said, dude I revere, my dad has been exposed to this medical process and hasn't tainted in a way where it's like, oh, this is the worst thing ever. It's designed to keep you healthy for a situation that is a killer for people that look like us, right? So I think it's the invasiveness for me, getting probed and prodded. Like, I mean, Bay had the double whammy. That from that aspect for me, that's tough.
Travis, just go get your cherry pop, man. You'll be all right.
Tell the doctor to give you a cigarette afterwards. All right, but listen, I do want to allocate some time for the elephant in the room, and it's something that doesn't get the conversation, particularly in our communities, and it's about mental health. And I think that, the mind, body, and soul, that's the trifecta, in my opinion, of healthy living. You could be built like Adonis, but if you batshit crazy, it don't matter. So I'm bringing that up to say, our mental health is so important. And I shared something with someone about therapy. I actually go to therapy.
Yes,
I'm not ashamed to say that. And I didn't know that there was a stigma around that. But what I found is that when you have the courage to speak to someone else about your internal turmoil, you're going to wind up a stronger person. One, because you have the ability to air that. Two, you have the ability to get some type of therapeutic remedy for those issues. And, I like to draw a correlation to COVID. If you notice, a lot of people are having re-entry issues. I don't think it's an issue that these basketball players are getting things thrown at them, or there's a lot more road rage incidents and just a lot of just disrespect. And I know, Rich, as a person that's a public servant, you may even see that there's a marked difference over the past year of how people are acting. And I contend, not being a psychologist, is that something did change for us all with this isolation. And some of us have developed bad habits. I know some people are drinking more than they should, or have used some recreational substances, so that they could escape that reality of being in a COVID environment. So what do you guys think about the mental health aspect? And are you doing creative outlets to make sure that you're feeling comfortable in your surroundings and with your loved ones?
Well, we're human beings. We like to be with other human beings. They put us in a situation where they took that gathering away from us. Then they stressed us out with this boogeyman that's floating around in the air that's going to get us. Then they took you financially and they just stripped you down to nothing. And then they told you now you can't go outside. Your kids have got to stay home. And you know, there's couples out there that hate each other and they lock them in the house together.
Yeah.
And then they closed the liquor stores the first. You know, this whole thing, to me, they gave you a signal of what this whole thing was going to be. And I'm going to be totally frank with you guys. The toilet paper run was just that they were just full of shit the whole time.
I like that.
That's all the toilet paper run was. They just said, look at the bullshit we're going to give these people. Look at what we're going to give them. And we're going to let them go run, get toilet paper and watch these fools do it. Toilet paper, man. The shelves were empty of not Gatorade, not things to survive, toilet paper.
That's a fact. That's a fact.
Come on, man. Just put something on my forehead.
Look at gas the other day. How they
Yeah.
with gas, putting gas in plastic bags.
Plastic bags.
Yeah. I'm sorry, babe.
I'm sorry, Travis. But back to the mental health thing. They stressed us out, man. And they took every outlet that we have to relax and to decompress away from us. They had the kids at home. They had the mother and father at home. No money coming in, no toilet paper. And they said, you're on your own. Mm-hmm. So of course you're going to, when now they give you some freedom, everybody's going to go buck wild. So that's my outlook on it.
I think there's a few things for me to latch on to there, Bay. I'll start with the last statement you said. And one of the things that I think has become more important and hopefully highlighted amongst people's minds is the need for greater, stronger involvement in community, right? Like I personally have developed stronger relationships with my family, my children and my wife, because I had greater access to them than I had nearly the entire time my wife and I have been married. Being home where everyone is in the home all at the same time. You guys know I just retired from the military, so I'm used to being, and so are they used to me being gone more than I'm in the house, right? And I think that was a good change up dynamic, but it was also, from a mental health standpoint, it was restorative. There were a lot of things that I learned about the people I live with, and they learned about me. That's helpful, to make our relationship stronger and healthy. Sometimes it's those, prickly things that somebody you lives with gets on your nerves. And then other times there's just, learning intricate little things about, how someone likes to do their homework or the location that they like to do their homework. And these other things that we were forced to focus more intently on, I think has been helpful. The standpoint that I'd like to kind of focus in on with mental health is, like you said, Darren, the need to destigmatize. For me, as a veteran, the connotation of mental health, it takes on a different kind of lens, right? Because you have tons of folks that are in my demographic that struggle with mental health issues, whether it be PTSD or other issues that they've been struggling with, that more often than they should end up leading to, serious issues like suicide or other medical conditions, right? And the destigmatization of mental health is something that's very important. But part of it is what we were kind of joking about in the last segment, which is don't get overburdened by, the bravado in the male, ego thing where it's like, if I say I need help, or if I demonstrate, that I'm vulnerable in some way, then that equates to weakness, right? And that's in the military, that's a thing, right? Where we've, since I joined in the mid 90s to now, the tone and tenor of those kinds of conversations are completely different. The culture of the military has changed a lot because we've been fighting a couple wars. But in the age of COVID, when you think about people needing to ask for help, it's a much more tolerant environment because you have support and encouragement coming from external sources. So going back to the community piece, I think that's a key point. Whatever community demographic you belong to, having people to encourage you and prod you along to do good and take care of yourself, like the colonoscopy thing with Rich, that's part and parcel to doing the right thing by yourself, is having people, who are informed to help you, do the right thing and have create an environment where those right decisions are embraced, not shunned as weakness.
I'll just be quick on it, man. I think therapy is definitely something that's helped me out. Actually, I get excited talking about it and telling people. I come back energized, and not only have I, talking to someone, a professional about it, but he's giving me different coping mechanisms, which, as you see behind me, sometimes when I just need to talk or vent and get it out, a therapeutic option for me might just be writing music. You know what I mean? So just the outlet to get it out is important. It's needed.
Let me ask this question, because we've got 6 minutes and I want to give everybody justice, because it is not just a solitary path with respect to effective mental health. What can the women in your life do to help you become and remain healthy, mentally and physically?
Shut up. No, I'm just playing. Just continue to support and understand, even though being a man or being an officer in the family, man, like, I'm human too, you know what I mean? So just being able to allow me to sit in desensitized, to come and just say, hey, listen, I do need help, to cry, and not to judge me, to make me feel weaker. That's helpful. I'll be short based on time.
I think go ahead, babe.
I agree with you, Rich. I mean, yeah, there's times when you have to break down as a man. You have to show the more sensitive side. You have to let that out, because you can't be Superman all the time. You can't be, iron all the time. So there's sometimes where you just gotta decompress, like you said, and sometimes you gotta show that sensitive. Sometimes you really don't know what to do. So, and you got all of that, the weight of the world on you. And sometimes you're just gonna break down. But after that breaking down, don't use that and say to me, well, you're not a man, you couldn't handle it. Understand that, I don't know everything. I don't know everything, but I'm damn sure going to try it. And I'm going to make a decision, and I'm going to stand on that decision. And if we got to pivot and move, then we'll pivot and move. But be down with me. Be down with me. I met my wife in salsa dancing. In salsa, you have a leader and you have a follower. And where I lead you and how you follow me, that makes us look good together. And I got your support when I'm leading, and we look good together because I'm leading you and you're following me, and we look good together, and you're supporting me. You're supporting my emotions. And that's how it is in a marriage and the women. And also food, women are in charge of, most of the time in most houses, they're cooking, they're doing all of that stuff. So they can pick the better foods. They can learn more about nutrition. And figure out what we should eat, and let us know, listen, babe, that gut's getting a little big on you. Them pants are, there's no more 34s. We got to go 36s. And, maybe she'll tell you that, and your pride has come up and you're like, nah, I'm staying with my 34s. And I'll eat the vegetables. I'll eat the fruits, And so women have more power over men than they really realize. They just don't take advantage of it. A lot of them don't. Some of them are wise. The older women are wise and they know what they're doing. They take advantage of it. But they have a big part. I mean, the women in my life have a major part of my life, So that's just what I can say.
Agreed. I think I agree with much of what you said, Bay. In my household, my wife is the center of gravity. She's the conscience of the home. And there's a lot of things that I may not be open to, like self, realization things where she's helped me realize that might not be the best course of action. I think women generally have the ability to kind of help men see things because of our ability to rely on the ego and the kind of male bravado thing as the default, even when it's not in our best interest. They seem to be much better positioned just to help us see our own flaws in ways that we're not as individuals capable of. And that's, for me, as a man, that's been hugely beneficial. So don't be afraid to have that outside check on doing the right thing.
That's 100%.
Hey, there was one question I wanted to specifically answer before we close out, and then just give it to the rest of you guys, because we got a question about how can I encourage the men in my life to go get mental health services. I'm going to take that only from the standpoint that, my perspective is that you're never going to make anyone get help if they don't get or acknowledge that there's a need to get one. For sustained emotional well-being. In other words, if you tell somebody that you see that this is something that they have an opportunity, if they're not willing to embrace that, they're not going to wholeheartedly make the attempts to, address those issues. That's called denial. So from my perspective, you have to, if you're in that situation, really have an open communication line to give that to them from an honest perspective. And then you have to individually gauge whether or not they're serious and really want to make that move, and then, when we're talking about emotional issues, then you have to determine and make a self-analysis. If that's not something that they're fully vested in, you have to make a decision whether or not you've got to bounce. Because when we're talking about mental health, and I'm not crazy by any stretch of the imagination, mental health is beyond is a whole bunch of things. It could be
no stigma here, Darren.
Right. No, I'm just saying,
we know you ain't crazy.
No,
I don't know, man. I don't know, Darren.
It could be your attitude. But my point is, what I'm saying is that basically you have to have that open communication, and then you have to gauge them and then support them, because it's tough being able to say that you're not who you think you are, because that's typically when we go off the rails. We want to be the director and the conductor, and sometimes that's just not the case. So that takes a lot as a man to tell that to a woman. So as the woman helping him, you've got to support him. And sometimes you might have to carry the weight until they get to that perspective where they make that step improvement where you see them. I know for a fact I did that, and I'm a better husband, brother, individual, because I'm following, what I need to do, and I'm a much happier person. So
sometimes seeing how your negative behavior or things that you're struggling with negatively impact the people you care most about is enough.
Yeah,
exactly.
Right?
Yeah. Hey, it's 3:30, man. We actually
go yourself too. Sometimes when you go yourself and you actually come back and say, hey, this is what I got from it, can encourage as well.
That's a good point, Rich. That's definitely a good point.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Darren.
No, I was just saying, it seems like we start this, and then before you know it, it's time to roll.
Yes. That's good.
So thank you guys for joining. I mean, I really enjoy having the conversations with you, because we don't rehearse. We just talk from our hearts. And I think we get a lot of informative and provocative thought processes out there. I want to thank the audience, and I hope you guys continue to support us. And we're here, and we'll see you next month.
Brothership. And don't forget to log on to the Sistahship either next week.
All right.
It's real.
we on a brothership. Come with us, we on a brothership. Yeah, we on a brothership. Roll with us, we on a brothership. Sistership, we got this on a brothership united. Sistership, we got this on a brothership united. Sistership, we got this on a brothership united. Sistership, we got this on a brothership.
I enjoyed the conversation, guys. That was cool.
I need a place where I can talk about some other shit. You drew for some other men, I'm looking for a brothership. I need a place where I can talk about some other shit. You drew for some other men, I'm looking for a brothership.